Salve, my friends, and welcome back to S.P.Q.R. Productions. Today, we are going to be looking at one of the most historically and politically significant monuments from the Augustan period, the altar commonly referred to as the Pacis. In addition to learning about the altar's history, we will also be touring the actual location through some video that I took while I visited Rome over the summer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And let's get right into it. The Pacis Augustae, Latin for the Altar of Augustan Peace, commonly shortened to just Pacis, is an altar in Rome dedicated to Pax, the Roman goddess of peace. The monument was commissioned by the Roman Senate on July 4th, 13 BC to honor the return of Augustus to Rome after 3 years in Hispania and Gaul, and it was consecrated on January 30th of 9 BC. Originally located on the northern outskirts of Rome, a Roman mile from the boundary of the Pomerium on the west side of the Via Flaminia, the Pacis stood in the northeastern corner of the Campus Martius, the former floodplain of the Tiber River, and gradually became buried under 4 meters, 13 feet, of silt deposits. It was reassembled in its current location, now the Museum of the Pacis, in 1938, turned 90 degrees counterclockwise from its original orientation so that the original western side now faces south. Now that you have some of the basic background of the altar and its history, let's move on to information regarding the structure itself by taking a look at it through videos that I got. As you can see, the altar is currently held in a modern structure that was constructed in 2005. I personally am not a fan of the space, as the shape is odd and the shadows are very unpleasant, but it does have air conditioning, so I won't complain too much. As one walks into the structure that the altar is held in, they first notice a miniature model of the Campus Martius during the Augustan period. All that it consisted of at the time was Agrippa's Pantheon, a temple which we will discuss in a later video, the Mausoleum of Augustus, which housed the remains of some of the earliest Roman emperors, the Horologium, a large sundial constructed by Augustus, and finally the Pacis. Next, one will notice a small exhibit showcasing the busts of various imperial figures from the Julio-Claudian dynasty. While these are not original works, they still serve their purpose of showing visitors the figures that ran Rome during one of its most expansive and influential periods. Finally, as one reaches the main room of the museum, they begin to see the magnificent Pacis, one of, in my opinion, the most beautiful structures ever created. The Pacis is, to the first-time visitor, quite a bit larger and more impressive than they would expect. One will notice the 2 frontal reliefs that adorn the entrance to the altar, which both depict important and interesting pieces of Augustan propaganda. The one on the left depicts Romulus and Remus being suckled by the she-wolf, which both demonstrates Rome's divine origin, and also connects the current rulers to the mythical ones of the past. Below both of these reliefs, we see a series of laureate reliefs, which both add beauty and an element of naturalism to the monument. On the right, we see Aeneas, Romulus and Remus's ancestor and the founder of the city where they were born, sacrificing a white sow. This, like the left relief, further strengthens the connection between the current rulers and those of the past. Now, we will move around to the right side of the altar, where we can see an imperial procession taking place. Both Augustus and Agrippa are visible in this one, so feel free to stop the video, take a look, and put your guess as to which ones they are in the comments below. Now, we move to the back of the altar, where we can see what is one of the most controversial reliefs on it, as historians don't exactly know what the heck it is. One of their best guesses is the goddess Hesta, the goddess of the hearth, but in reality, this is still far from decided. The relief on the right side of the back of the altar depicts the goddess Roma. However, you may notice that there isn't much of the original relief that is still present, but rather just a bunch of red lines. This is because, during reconstruction, many pieces of the altar were lost, which led to archaeologists working on the project to work with what they had and use a little bit of guesswork. In fact, they actually used coins to recreate this image, and in fact, one of these will be featured in an upcoming video. Anyways, back to the altar. The final relief on the outside of the altar is another imperial procession. One interesting thing to note about this one is one of Augustus's grandchildren, Lucius, tugging on his parents' clothes. This element of realism is a fantastic way to feel reconnected with the ancients, even through such a small thing as getting bored as a kid at a formal event. feel free to pause the video to take a closer look at this fascinating insight to Roman history. Now, we finally enter the famed altar, which is surprisingly larger than one would first assume. Inside, you can see a variety of fantastic reliefs, most of which depict various animals being sacrificed and other religious services taking place. The Orologium, which was the massive sundial that was constructed with the Pacis on the Campus Martius, served an interesting feature that involved the actual sacrifice that took place in the altar every year. Every year, on Augustus's birthday at exactly sundown, the sundial would perfectly cover the altar, where an annual sacrifice was being held, through its shadow. A fascinating and fantastic demonstration of both Roman engineering precision and the amazing propaganda that was put out by the Principate. Now, please enjoy the rest of our tour of the inside of the altar. Well, this is the end. Our tour of the Pacis has been concluded, and with it, our video. I hope that you enjoyed this wonderful monument and all that it has to offer, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.